Hi everybody and welcome to Geektube Central and our Game of Thrones Season 1 Episode 1 review of The Red Woman. Now obviously, like a lot of people, the big main question was, is Jon Snow really dead? And if so, is he coming back? Now I'd love to say that the question is answered, but we do get the actual confirmation, not that we didn't need to from the last episode. He is definitely dead, and he's dead all episode. And once you get over that part, you can start to look at it from their angle. Although there is the whole idea of resurrection, we're not seeing it yet. But I think this is going to be a build-up, and overall I really did like the episode. It was a lot of expectation coming into it, but let's just accept it for what it is. Now we are literally where we left off in the last episode, the finale from season 5, and we're at the wall. And light is just becoming to crest over the horizon, and like in the season trailer, it just cuts straight in on Jon. Now, as we see Jon compared to how we saw him last, when the blood was just flowing out, and I remember thinking how black that blood looked, and obviously because there was no light, so you couldn't see any colour, it looked like he was the blood of the Night's Watch. He was bleeding this black blood, and he was betrayed, right? But when you see him, you see that it's red. And the most poignant thing is, because we already know he's dead and lying in the snow, you hear from the second it starts, Ghost howling, and it's just this awful in pain. And Ser Davos is the first one to come out, and he sees from across the courtyard, and he comes running. And I remember thinking, it's not just that he's coming out and finding him dead, you can just see from the look, and it was the way I felt watching it. You're seeing this young man, the Lord Commander, who had a lot of, weight from his responsibilities on his back. But at the end of the day, he's still a young man. He's a boy, kind of. He still is. And so, 4 other brothers come out. One of them being Dolorous Ed. That's the guy that he went to Hardhome with. And they bring him in. And you see that, he's dead. He's already turning pale white. And just seeing how Ed reverently runs his hand over the multiple wounds, and he closes his eyes, and the first thing he said is, this is Alistair Thorne. That, like he knew, and he already knows that it's not good, and that this isn't going to end well, and they're probably all going to die, because, if you're not with him, you're against him, and they're obviously the only ones loyal to Jon. And Melisandre comes in, and you see her. Now, she already was kind of shocked and worn thin from Stannis' failure, but she comes in and sees him, and you see how reverently she touches him, and you see it's like all her hope is lost, because she saw a vision fairly recently of him fighting at Winterfell, and knowing that it's not happening, it's just sort of drained her. And then we just cut straight into the main hall, and Sir Alistair Thorne and that Yarwick guy and Bowen Marsh are there, and they're standing up, and obviously that Ollie bastard's there as well. And I'll give him this, he was very political, and he was like, yes, I killed him, but I never disobeyed an order, I just think he was ruining our lives. Which I think is a load of shit. He never really wanted to obey him, and first chance he took, he got rid of him, right? So, as you can see, the only other ally they have is Ghost, and Ser Davos quite really, bring him in, we'll need all the help we can get. And just seeing how sad Ghost is over his body was absolutely devastating for me. I myself have a pet. He's not a dire wolf, he's a white West Highland Terrier, but he's still a little wolf to me. And they come to the conclusion, we're probably going to die tonight, and the only thing we can do is to try and get help. And Ed goes off to get help, and it's kind of implied that he's going to go get wildling help, which at this point they're the only ones that actually have any sort of respect for Jon for helping them cross the wall. Now we're still in the north, and it cuts to Winterfell, and obviously them Bolton bastards are still there, and it cuts to quite around. I thought it would be all fighting, and where the hell is Sansa and Reek, and they're going to be running around. No, it's Ramsay mourning over Miranda's dead body. He's brought her in and put her on the bed, and he talks such sweetness about her being 11 when he met her, and how she was never afraid of him, but he still says chop her up and feed her to the dogs. Now, the real poignant moment is with his father, Roose. Roose says, oh, it's great that Stannis is dead. Whoever did it, I would quite happily give them money, give them a reward. But he also twists the knife and said, this whole thing with Sansa and Theon, it's all your own fault. And you've brought it on yourself. And because you've lost her, you're not going to be in line for for Warden in the North. And probably Walda, I should say, my wife is going to have a boy. And you see, that's the look on his face. He knows he's fucked up. And obviously Sansa and Reek survive the fall, and they're running through and remember, winter's already coming in the north. It's not fully there yet, it's not really, really bad yet, but it's bad enough. And Theon is really pulling and pushing for Sansa to get through, and they finally get to somewhere where they can shelter under this fallen tree, and he hugs her, not just for warmth, but you can tell he's consoling her and trying to comfort her. And it was just this look on her face that I thought was poignant, and that's why I took a screen capture of it. It's the first time I think she's known true comfort in a long while. And no sooner had they found this place, the Bolton soldiers have found them, and Theon tries to say, she's dead, you're not, I'll go with you, whatever. But obviously the dogs notice that she's still alive, and they're going to take her away. But then the best part is, Brienne and Pod come. And if ever you needed a cavalry at this point, it was them two, because although it's not easy and she doesn't get the best of them from the start, she still is a very formidable warrior. And she gets in there, and Pod, he's fighting himself, and you can tell he's obviously been taking up that instruction, and they manage to kill the soldiers. And even Theon picks up a sword and kills one last soldier that could have hurt Pod. And finally, after a season from the beginning of last season, Brienne offers her service, and this time Sansa takes it, and you really feel that not only is Brienne proud to continue to want to be in her service, Sansa is actually a lot more heartened for it, and you kind of get this impression, we might actually get somewhere with this. Now she might actually get away, and she might be stronger for it. Now, we cut to King's Landing, I should say. We cut to King's Landing, and this is the first time I can honestly say I've ever truly felt sorry for Cersei. Not even after Joffrey's death, but this is the moment I really felt for her. She gets all excited, she comes down with Zombie Mountain, who you can see in the top right left hand corner, and Jaime's there, and you see that golden shroud. Now this is just confirmation for her, and you can tell that she's just broken. Shame Walk was awful, but this was far worse. And she begins to talk about how the first body she saw was her mother, and how she couldn't stand the idea of her body being broken down and black, and she couldn't handle it. And she admits to Jaime about the prophecy. I knew she was going to die, it was all going to happen, and he says, fuck that, we're not going to let it happen, we're going to take everything back, and we're going to make them all pay. And I believe them. This short little area is basically Marjorie's still in the cells, and Shame Nunn is trying to get her to confess, but Marjorie doesn't believe that she's done anything wrong, to which the High Sparrow says, well, not everybody, you trying to say that you're blameless? And she's like, and as much as she's a prisoner, I still think Marjorie has power, because she's not going to give in like Cersei did, which I thought was fantastic. And she basically, throughout that small scene, is asking for her brother, and it just goes to show you that she's not broken. She might have been bent a little bit, she might be a bit down, but Marjorie has this strength in her. And even with the idea that Tommen wants her to come out and he wants her to come home quickly, she's not willing to confess, even to get out to see Tommen. She just cares about herself and her brother, and at this point I understand that. So this is the part of the episode which is quite controversial. A lot of people don't like Dorne, they don't like Ellaria since last season with her Sand Snake children, but I can kind of understand why that is. They've just basically been hate-fueled, and this episode really does show the extent of how brutal they are, because she turns on Doran like you would not believe. When the message comes about Myrcella, and I have it here, and it says, the Princess Myrcella died by poisoning on a return journey. I suspect Ellaria, not you, but my sister will demand war. I doubt Ellaria's head will appease. It is a start, along with your nieces. Your son cannot stay in King's Landing. I'm sending him back on the same ship. Now that is Jaime sending it, and you can see on the right hand corner of the message that it has the Lannister seal on it. And you're kind of thinking, well, at least they're not going to get in trouble. You know, the Martell name and the rulers aren't going to get it. It's just this tiny little coup that's coming within the bastards, you know, Ellaria Sand and her children. But it's not, because no sooner had they got the message, and he hadn't even been able to say to anybody, Areo Hotah is stabbed in the back by Tyene Sand. Ellaria Sand pulls out a hidden dagger and stabs Prince Doran. But as shocking as that is, what I noticed most is that the guards, and they have plenty of guards in the background, you can see them there near them, they even go for the messenger as well, and not once did these guards, and you can see them in these stills, they're not going for them at all. And this is when Ellaria said, you know, you're weak, you didn't avenge, you know, Elia and her children, you didn't avenge Oberyn, and you know what, you don't deserve to rule Dorne. And he asks after his son, and she says, your son's just as weak as you, and we're not going to have weak men ruling Dorne anymore. And I think that more than just getting revenge, this is a coup to take over Dorne. And there is strong evidence that the Dornish people do respect a strong woman leader because of the original Nymeria who came from the Rhoyne in Essos. But you can see that they're not just stopping there. The other two Sand Snakes must have left immediately after the ship with Jaime and Myrcella, and they come and they're on board the ship that is just docked at King's Landing, and they say, we've come here to kill you, no preamble. And he says, you know, I don't want to hurt you. And he says, don't worry, you're not going to hurt us. And they give him a choice, but you're like, this is too easy. They're totally cold now. And right then, Obara Sand stabs him right in the back of the head, and you can see it, and I had to show it from behind just to show you how brutal it looks. She's just right there, and it's very reminiscent of Oberyn, but I don't think they hold any truth to what Oberyn felt, because he never believed in hurting little girls like Myrcella, and they went against him like that, even though he's dead. But they were never going to stop. They wanted revenge against the Lannisters. It was a long time coming, and I think that they really need these characters. They want the Seven Kingdoms to be broken up with. I think this is the big, or the seminally big area of where there's going to be dissent in Westeros, besides in the King's capital, you know, of King's Landing with the Sparrows. Got over that and you're going, right, I want to find out about Dany. And you get to Meereen, and it's a little light scene, and I actually really liked it because Tyrion, who does speak Valyrian, but you find it really not well compared to someone like Varys, who obviously can speak it very well. And he tries to offer gold for this woman for her baby, and she seems to think that he wants to eat the baby. And it probably doesn't help that he's a dwarf, but obviously that's something that he has to deal with on both sides of the continent. And they're discussing about how without Daenerys we're going to be in trouble here. The Harpy are still going to cause crap. And you see this whole Red Woman thing, even though the Red Woman you can say is Melisandre, you've got this also where she seems to be quite lacking in faith. They cut to Meereen, where the faith seems to be quite strong with the Red Priests in Meereen. And no sooner are they talking about, you know, we're going to be in trouble if she doesn't come back, they look and all the ships are burnt. And the reason why this is kind of half funny, half sad, is that Tyrion's like, we need to get to Westeros, and you know what, we're never going to get to Westeros now. You understand that, yeah, there's more than just Dany being missing. Now they've got, like, they're not even safe in Meereen. So we cut to the whole, we're still wondering where Daenerys is. And what I love about this scene, and you see Jorah's concerned about his grayscale, and he's tracking, and he sees the discoloration in the grass from where a large horde of horses have been trampling, and he just nails it one after the other. You know, this is the Dothraki, they have her, he sees that she's left that little breadcrumb in her ring, and it seems to me, although Daario Naharis is a really good soldier or whatever and a fighter, you can see even Jorah, who seems weakened by the grayscale, he's just totally on point here. He's just totally, we're going to find her. And we cut to Daenerys and we see her as a prisoner. Now, she was kind of like a prisoner in the beginning of season 1, in that she was sold into marriage, but she really felt it was really like she was a slave. But it was like with all the trappings of being dressed up and being given gifts and being thought as the Khaleesi, but she was trapped in something that she didn't really want to be in. Whereas this time, we're reintroduced to the Dothraki and this new Khal, which is Khal Moro. And I really enjoy seeing the Dothraki again because, quite frankly, I think that they were one of the most interesting civilizations in Westeros, and once Khal Drogo died, it just kind of went the way of it. And I just hope that she would have been more for her Khaleesi type role. I mean, what's the point of being called Khaleesi if she doesn't really keep to some of those traditions? And the most disgusting part about the whole thing is that she's treated like a slave and that she's going to get bedded by, the Khal, and he's going to put a baby in her belly and she's just going to be a slave. And she, although not like how she was in season 1, episode 1, she's more empowered, and she says, "You're not taking me. I am the Khaleesi, and a breaker of chains and mother of dragons, and I'm the Queen of Meereen." And I love her confidence, but they're like, this means nothing to us. And she should have known that, in my opinion. She should have known that they do not respect that at all. They respect very specific things, like how well you do in battle and how you move around and how many slaves you have. And she isn't like that anymore. And even though she knows about the Dothraki, it seems like she's lost that part of herself where she's been empowered by what happened when she was married to Khal Drogo, but she's lost the sense of these are the people that you can't really use your westernized kind of ways. And in the end, she obviously name drops, Khal Drogo, and that changes something. And at first, she looks kind of pleased, yeah, they get the score, I'm Khal Drogo's wife. But what she doesn't realise is that just because she's Khal Drogo's wife or widow, it's not going to change anything. She doesn't have any power. In matter of fact, she's kind of taboo, kind of in a way, like, nobody will touch you, don't worry about that. But just so you know, we're taking you to a place where you're supposed to be, and you're going to stay there with the rest of the widows, because, quite frankly, even though she offered them 1,000 horses to take her back to Meereen, they weren't going to take that. And when the wives, who've been totally bitchy out throughout, telling their Khal Moro to just chop her head off, they say it is known, and you're like, yep, we're back to the Dothraki. They have strict rules, they have this way and tradition, and it is just known. And there's no change in that, and you can see how frustrated she is, because she knows full well that when they have a certain way, they're going to stick to it, and she's kind of stuck. Now finally we're back to Braavos, and we finally get to see Arya, and it's always great to see Arya, but as great as it was seeing her, you realise, she's vulnerable, but in a way that she's not used to. She's literally in a beggar's alley, sitting on some steps. She gets a few coins in her bowl, and the waif shows up, and she's like, kind of taunting her about being blind. Here you go, here's a stick. And she beats the shit out of her, and she leaves her there. And I love this little picture here where she's sort of looking really sad and broken and bruised and bloodied, and you see the great statue of Braavos, and how it's a different angle from where she's used to being. And you're thinking, you might be in Braavos, but this is another side of Braavos. Just like how she sees the statue, if she could see that you're at a different side of Braavos, this is completely new territory for you. So we end the episode where we started, back at Castle Black, and we see that Alistair Thorne has a group of brothers armed to the teeth out in the courtyard as he comes in to try and confront and get them to back down. So he comes and he offers them to come out. They'll not be harmed as long as they come out peacefully and hand over Jon's body. Ghost does not agree. He comes with the offer that he'll let Ser Davos leave. They'll even give him a horse. Just come out. You've got till nightfall to decide. And I love how Ser Davos, just in this little bit of cutting tension, he says, well, if you're going to send me, I need some food, and if I'm getting food, I'd really like some mutton. Can I have some mutton? And there's this funny look on Alistair's face where he just looks sort of like, what the fuck, what's this all about? Obviously I don't think they're going to entertain it, and they start to discuss the Red Woman, and the brother's like, well, what is a one woman going to do? And that last picture of Ser Davos's face is him saying, you have no idea what that Red Woman can do, and I've seen it. Speaking of the Red Woman, we see Melisandre, and she just looks worn out, and she's kind of hand-wringing. Her hands are sort of clasped together, and she's sitting by the fire, and she's not looking at it with like this awe-inspiring look. She just looks totally forlorn, and she comes over to this old rusty mirror and she looks at herself, and it's like she doesn't see herself. It's like she's seeing something else, and she doesn't see the red vestments as what they weren't empowering to her, and she starts to strip off. And not that we haven't seen Melisandre naked before. And she starts to take off her choker, and what I notice is, and you can see in these little stills, is the embers start to glow bright as she's starting to undo the clasp, and then it starts to become dull as she takes it off. Now, there is power in that choker necklace, but what kind of power? And she puts it down on the table, and on that table there's all these little potion vials you can see in the foreground. But when she looks back in the mirror, you can see that it looks awful grey and her hair isn't dark, and the big reveal that everybody got all freaking shocked by, she's really freaking old. Now, there's people saying she could be anywhere from 100 to 400 years old, and she just wanders off and she crawls into bed, and the episode ends with her lying in bed under the covers. And you're kind of left thinking, what the hell was that all about? Now, people are going on about the fact that maybe she's the choker was what gave her power, that she looked young because she was wearing the choker, but that's kind of thrown out the window when you remember back in season 4, I think it was, episode 7, she was in a bath and she was talking to Stannis' wife Selyse, and she wasn't wearing the choker in that. Now that rules out that theory, but what I think it was is that with her faith cloak she wears and wearing the choker, those are just enhancements of her power, and obviously she can glamour to make herself look really young, which shows she is very strong, which probably, even though being a really old woman is embody her, she's old, being that old and being that true with your faith makes her very strong. But because she's already shaken after what happened with Stannis last season and with seeing Jon dead, it's changed her, and I think she's kind of given up on her red god, and that power has sort of left her. And because she's gave up, she's looked at these vestments that she's wearing and she can't wear them because she doesn't hold true to them. And as she strips off and she takes that final piece off, whatever was holding that glamour making her young fell away, just like taking the cloak off and the choker off. I believe that she's just tired. She's shaken by the fact that everything she's seen hasn't come true. She probably doesn't believe in her religion anymore, so she takes everything off and she just crawls into bed, because maybe when you're that tired, just holding up that visage of being true to your red god and having that reward of being able to look young, it means nothing to her. She feels as old as how she really looks, and so she transforms back to her older self and just climbs into bed, because maybe that's the only way she can lie down and sleep, because we've never actually seen her do much sleeping, have we? She's done many things but not sleep. And I think that there's two trains of thought. There's one thought saying that maybe she's stripping off because she's gearing up to give herself over, to give her life, to bring back Jon with the power, whatever's left of her red power, or simply because she's just tired, she's gave up on her faith and she's decided to just revert to being an old woman because that's how she really feels, and she'd rather be an old woman because she doesn't have faith in her red god. Now the director of the episode, and I can't remember his name, it's something like Padewa, directs this episode and the next episode called Home. He said about how that's just her stripping off because she just kind of lost faith in her god, and I believe that too. Regardless if you think that he's telling the truth on that, I just think that she's gave up, and so she took all that stuff off, and now she's an old woman. And now we're left kind of open-ended, because you're like, well, if we've seen all this power up to this point, and even Ser Davos, who's never been her biggest fan, he's seen what she's capable of, and he's kind of like, well, you know, maybe he doesn't automatically think that she can bring Jon back, but maybe he thinks, well, she can get us out of this, maybe her red powers can help us. But obviously, seeing the next scene where he's not involved, he doesn't realise that asset, that's something that they have on their side beside a direwolf. They don't really have her because she's not her anymore, she's just this old woman. Now overall, I thought it was a really good episode. Yes, we see Jon Snow dead and he's just lying on that table that they put him on, and Melisandre's down, possibly out. We don't know where that's going with that, but actually I'm happy that they just left it like that. I think if they gave us exactly what we wanted, that Jon just pops up 2 minutes later, would fall flat, and that's kind of what you don't want to happen. And I don't mind if they draw out a couple episodes, because obviously how is Melisandre going to do anything like resurrect like Thoros of Myr if she's completely shaken by her faith, because it's her faith that gives her that power. Now whether or not you like the red god and the red priestesses and their religion, because they've done horrible things like burn people and the whole shadow baby thing, but as much as they have this sort of really foreboding and menacing part of them, they do have a power that other people don't have. And at this point we need that if we want to get Jon Snow back. Now whether or not that's going to happen, we don't know. So I'm just quite happy, and I realised this 2 minutes before the episode, and I remember thinking, just relax, just enjoy it for what it is, don't expect too much, just let it flow over you. Now I think the reason why we just have to try and just carry on is because obviously the big question is, Jon Snow, is he dead? Is he coming back? He is definitely dead. We don't know if he's coming back, but we'd like him to. That's why what happened in Dorne, and that's why what happened with seeing Melisandre, that sort of big reveal, it's something to take you away from that really solid sticking point, what's happening to Jon. It's because if you're too concentrated on Jon, none of whatever else happens this season is going to matter, and they still have to build up things. That's why I think they built up the whole Martell mutiny in Dorne, and how those two are dead, Prince Doran and Prince Trystane, is because that is going to be something else that's going to be part of the season beside Jon being dead. That's why we're seeing Dany and how she's possibly going to be taken against her will to the Dosh Galene Vase Dysrak. You just have to embrace the fact that if it's going to happen, it's going to happen, but there's still a lot of stuff that they're setting up, but there's things that haven't happened in the TV show that have happened in the books that they could probably look at, like how we're seeing Arya being blind. We have to understand that it's an ensemble cast. We can't just focus on one, but other things happening around Westeros could easily affect or help what's happening with Jon. Overall, like I said, I did enjoy the episode, but at the same time you're kind of left going, what the hell is happening now? I feel kind of adrift where we've lost Jon and it looks like we've lost Melisandre and she was our only hope. Overall, I give the episode like a 7.5 out of 10. Simply because I believe that whatever's going to happen is going to get even better, and I need the kind of space. The 7.5 is the whole shock, also what happened in Dorne, because I'm kind of disappointed about how they killed off Prince Doran and Trystane, because they're basically shattering a dynasty, kind of like what happened with the Targaryens. They're leaving them with Ellaria and her bastard daughters, and there's nothing wrong with being a bastard. We can see a lot of bastards do really well, and we like Jon Snow, but I don't think that them killing the Martells is going to make Dorne a better place, and I think that's actually going to make them descend into chaos. So overall, yes, I did enjoy the episode, but I'm actually really excited to see Bran, and he's in the next episode, people, so it's going to be really good, and that is where I think we're going to see flashbacks in the past. Although this was a really good opening episode, it's like it's the same with when you watch The Walking Dead. When you watch an episode, you can enjoy it, but where it leaves you in the last seconds of the episode, you're kind of like, well, episode 1 was good, but I want to see episode 2. It's kind of like that thing. It doesn't close off and end where you get some sort of satisfaction from an ending. It actually gave me more questions than answers than it was when we first started off seeing Jon Snow dead in the snow. So I hope you've enjoyed this review. It's really late. I've been choked up with a cold all week. My chest is gowping, Scottish for really sore, and hopefully the next episode I'll get a review out quicker. Tell me what you think about what happened in the episode. Like, subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you very soon for the next episode in our review series. Thank you very much.